WVUA-FM, Tuscaloosa.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, here on 90.7 The Capstone to another edition of the College Football Wrap-Up Show, Offseason Edition. I'm Nicholas Pursley, joined, as always, by Joe Schatz. How are we doing?
Pretty good. A lot of stuff to talk about on this show, so looking forward to getting into it. And, pretty good weekend so far.
And Adam Hambright, back?
Yeah, I'm back. Missed last week. A lot of stuff has happened in the last couple of weeks that we're about to talk about. I'm doing okay, but usually, I'm okay, and then I get on, the internet and read some other take by some of these people, and it puts me in a bad mood pretty fast. So
yeah, it's been overall a bad week to be on the internet, honestly. Twitter, it just becomes a cesspool at some points.
Some people were saying, they had to delete Twitter, just so they wouldn't get on it, but, all of us, we use that for, part of what we do, covering sports.
It's tough, you can't, the job is you can't delete Twitter, right? You kind of have to subject yourself to it because you have to know what's going on.
It's one of the fastest ways to get information.
That is very true. For better or for worse, as we'll talk about. So obviously, this is a college football show, but we have to discuss the entire situation involving Darius Miles, involving Brandon Miller. We're gonna spend some time kind of going through the facts, what we know, because there's been a lot of misinformation on the internet these past couple weeks. People just, I would say, blowing things way out of proportion. Some bigger places, Outkick for one, that was reporting false information, no ifs, ands, or buts. We're gonna kind of go through it. I think when we were kind of discussing whether we wanted to talk about this on our show or not, we're a college football show, but this is kind of an Alabama as a whole issue, I think, just as much. And, I feel like we all kind of want to talk about it. Have to have a way to.
I feel like it's bad if we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Acknowledge it.
I agree.
Yeah.
So let's just kind of get right into things. Obviously, everybody, this was, I can't remember how many weeks ago it was now that we first learned about the whole Darius Miles situation. Yeah,
I believe it was over a month ago that the first reports came out.
Yeah. And obviously, the whole situation, what had happened was that Darius Miles provided the gun. It was his gun that was used in the shooting death of Jemiah Janae Harris. She's 23 years old. Terrible situation. Miles was immediately dismissed from the team, and him and the person who actually committed the shooting are both being charged with capital murder.
It has went to grand jury, awaiting their decision on if it's going to trial, which it most likely will.
Yeah, but honestly, I had thought that we were almost done with the situation, talking about it, because it had happened so long, and then of course, I can remember where I was. I had just come out of class. I look at my phone, and about an hour before, you've got these headlines that are saying, oh, well, now Brandon Miller was involved. And it's like, oh, you're kidding. This is like bombshell, right? I don't know what you guys were doing when you first saw the headlines.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what I was
just
doing.
Your immediate reaction.
I remember. Yeah, well, it was interesting because I remember when Miles first got arrested, they talked about, there was lingering stuff about how they were going to question Brandon Miller and some of these guys involved, and it didn't sound like there was much more than just hey, he's your teammate, you probably know him, just kind of standard stuff. But then, it kind of came out, obviously, it seems he was a lot more maybe involved than some people thought.
Yeah, definitely. And, I can't remember exactly what I was doing. I think I was in class, when I got the update and everything, and really shocking. But then, for me, I want to get, information on the stuff. So I start going and trying to find, any article or any update on, the actual situation to get facts and, find some facts, some, not so factual information.
Those were hard to come by.
But, I don't know. It was just, it's shocking. We're going to get into some more stuff about it, but you obviously don't want anybody that or goes to school or is on your, sports teams. You never want anybody to be involved, but it was, so now we're here.
Yeah. So let's kind of get into some of the facts. Obviously, we have a statement from Brandon Miller's lawyers now, the testimony that the Tuscaloosa police gave in court. So we'll kind of start with that. So the Tuscaloosa police testified that Miller brought the gun that was used in the shooting death of Jemiah Jonah Harris. The gun did belong to Darius Miles. This is a key fact that, we talked about Outkick getting this wrong. Outkick was saying that it was Miller's gun. That is incorrect based on police testimony. It is Darius Miles's gun that was in the vehicle of Brandon Miller. So now I'm going to read to you a statement that Greg Byrne made on ESPN's College Game Day podcast with, I can't remember his name. Reese Davis, yes. And this was on February 22nd, so this would have been last Wednesday. We found out some new facts yesterday. We found out some new facts today. Here's what we know. Brandon Miller was not there for the verbal altercation. Brandon was already on his way to pick up Darius Miles, of course, when Darius texted him, and he's talking about the text to bring the weapon, of course, that Tuscaloosa police did testify that did happen. Brandon never left his vehicle and was not involved in the collection of the weapon. The shooting occurred just seconds after Brandon arrived. Brandon has been a fully cooperating witness and is not a suspect. Yesterday, we began to hear some new things from the hearing, and Coach Oates had just come out of practice and did not have the information from the hearing when he was talking with the media directly after practice. He did not handle that the way he should have. We've addressed that with him. He would go on to say, what I felt is that Brandon needed to be treated fairly like any other student athlete should be that's here at the University of Alabama, and that's what's been driving us through that, whether it was him or whether it was a student athlete on any other team. A lot to go through there. I'll kind of proceed on with the statement that the lawyers made, just some basic facts from that. These are the lawyers for Brandon Miller. The facts that were kind of laid out in that, Miles texted Brandon and asked him to bring his firearm. Miller arrived at the scene to pick up Miles, but never got out of his vehicle or interacted with anyone, so meaning he did not have interaction with Harris or her, I think it was her boyfriend.
I believe so.
Yes.
I'm not entirely
or, wasn't aware of the altercation that had taken place, and that Miles did not touch the gun and did not know that any illegal activity involving the gun would occur. And there was a good article on AL.com that basically asks, why couldn't Miller have been charged? Because most people would say, okay, well, he had, if he brought the gun, then, he should be charged as an accomplice. And basically what they're saying is that no, there's nothing that he could have been charged with, according to the DA. Former U.S. Attorney and prosecutor in Madison County, Jay Town, said in an interview for AL.com that it doesn't appear evidence exists that Miller knew that transferring the firearm was for an unlawful purpose, hindsight notwithstanding. Therefore, no conspiracy or aiding and abetting would apply, and that it doesn't seem that there is a federal theory of prosecution either.
Yeah. I believe earlier you did make a mistake. I believe you said Miles didn't touch the weapon. It was meant to be Miller.
Yes, Miller did not touch the weapon.
And that whole thing about him not knowing that it was going to be, used for illegal activity. Like we said earlier, it was in the vehicle. Nobody has stated that Miller grabbed the weapon from anywhere else. It was already in the vehicle. I believe it was said that Darius had the weapon inside the vehicle beforehand and just left it in there. I believe in one of the statements it was under some clothes in the back seat, and Miller did not know that it was there, and he was already on his way, like you said earlier, when the text message got sent out.
Right. So, all the facts out there, hopefully, better than what the internet will give you, or Twitter specifically. The randomness
depending on certain, more known national media outlets or random Twitter people that like to comment on stuff. So
this is true, and I will say that of the national media who I've heard talk about this, I thought Stephen A. Smith did a really good job on First Take. Like immediately after it had, I think the day after it had happened, getting his facts straight. So just wanted to shout that out, I guess. He's listening.
Yeah, him
I know
and, if you heard Jay Byland, his statements about it, he said more of what Nate Oates should have said in his press conference of saying this is still an ongoing investigation and he's not allowed to comment on it. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the discussion around this was that, immediately after Nate Oates said in the press conference, he's coming right out of practice. He doesn't have the information, and said something to the effect of, wrong place, wrong time when it came to Brandon Miller, which is just not what you want to say. Yeah. A horrible look PR-wise. And we'll kind of get into that, how much of a, I think, disaster this has been for Alabama PR.
Yeah, definitely not the way you'd want it to be. Should have had statements, more prepared. I mean, sometimes that can sound bad, but that's what you're supposed to have prepared for stuff like this. And honestly, they probably thought that it wasn't going to really be news again. Like, obviously, when it was the original reporting of Darius Miles and his friend that was involved, that was maybe national news for a couple of days, and then it was all local. And then as soon as the stuff came out in the hearing that Brandon Miller was involved and he had driven the car that had the weapon in it to pick up Darius, that was when all of a sudden it became a national story again. And I don't think Alabama prepared for that, even though they already knew that they were witnesses. Obviously, they're not suspects, they're just witnesses, maybe like Brandon Miller, and I think there might have been another basketball player there. But when that came out, I assume that Alabama thought that it was just going to be, how it's been. They didn't think it was going to get blown up again, which they should have thought more of it when you have somebody as high profile as Brandon Miller, who is up for Freshman of the Year and Player of the Year in college basketball.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of why a lot of this stuff was really blown up and why a lot of this stuff was exaggerated, because it was Brandon Miller. I mean, even when it happened to Darius Miles, it seemed pretty quick that he was kicked off the team, wasn't going to play again, got arrested. And then, like we said, it kind of faded out of everyone's minds, fairly recently. And people were just kind of looking forward to getting back to basketball, and it kind of blows up again. And I think it's a tough situation, because I can't imagine, just out of basketball, to go away from the basketball team for a second. I mean, imagine being, the family of the victim, and all these major news outlets and all these reporters are talking about just kind of rehashing it and going over and over, and stuff that is fairly minute when it comes to the bigger problem of the fact that somebody was shot and killed. I just can't. Yeah, I just couldn't imagine that, and it's obviously a tough situation for Brandon Miller himself and the school and obviously the family of the victim and all that. So
yeah, just a tough situation. I can only imagine what that family's going through right now. And those, just the whole way that Alabama has handled this is, in my opinion, terrible. To let Nate Oates go into that press conference after the game, or after practice, and the way that he responded, it sounded like he knew what was kind of, he knew some facts, but it doesn't sound like he was prepared.
No.
Going into
and that was something it should have been, because it's Nate Oates' press conference. They're going to wait on him no matter what until he's ready to go in there. That's when the university, Greg Byrne, PR, whoever it was supposed to be, should have pulled him aside before going into the room and just kind of went over everything, just so we didn't have any kind of misunderstanding of what was meant to be said.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I'll kind of ask this. Given all the facts that we have laid out, should Brandon Miller have played in that game against South Carolina? Should he be playing basketball for the University of Alabama right now?
Now, for me, I think he should still be allowed to play until, right now the police have said that they are not charging him and there's nothing to charge him with. If it was, this has been the case from day one, according to the police. It was after it happened, the next day, they brought him in for questioning as a witness, not as a suspect. If he had been put down as a suspect, I would have expected the same thing to happen, to where he was off the team and no longer affiliated, if he was a suspect in what happened. Since he has been a witness from the beginning, and even now with them saying he's not going to be charged, there's nothing to charge him with, he is a witness and not a suspect, then I think he should be allowed to play. Because if we're going to kick people off of teams because they witnessed something happen, I know he was more involved than a normal witness would be, but if he's not getting charged with anything, you're opening up a door to where people are going to expect people to kick off the team just for being on the same block as something happening.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because, you're right, Adam. I mean, he didn't legally do anything. He was not getting charged with anything legally. Now, did he do something wrong? I don't know. I mean, no, we don't really know yet. Maybe the full extent of it all, but yeah. I mean, I think you kind of summed it up perfectly right there. I mean, he should still be allowed to play. I mean, there's no reason he shouldn't be allowed to play and play basketball. And it's just, it's real tough because, I mean, that first game back against South Carolina, when you're in the game and they're chanting stuff, I think they chanted lock him up and guilty and stuff like that. I mean, that's brutal for I mean, both him and just everybody in that arena and around the situation. So I think when it brings that type of notoriety, or maybe not notoriety, but when it brings that type of kind of, I don't even know, press with it, where
right.
You're playing a guy who's getting chanted stuff about, potential, or a murder, I should say, not a potential murder, an actual murder, and, maybe they could have handled it maybe a tad better, and I wouldn't have been opposed if they at least didn't start him for that South Carolina game, but I don't think, from a basketball perspective, and from what it sounds like, at least a legal perspective, he should still be eligible to play and allowed to play. So I don't think they're doing anything wrong in playing him. But it's definitely, I mean, Nate Oates has a tough job to figure all this out. And along with Greg Byrne and a lot of the other decision makers on that basketball team. So I don't know. I guess long story short, I guess I think he should be allowed to play, but it's like I said, it's tough when you're having to go on the road and hear all that from opposing fan bases.
Yeah, I can only imagine what that's like. And I think it showed in the game. You look at the rest of the team besides Miller, nobody really played well in that game.
So obviously Miller played really well. The next, Charles Bediako, he had 10 points. He was the second highest scorer in the game.
Yeah.
And you could tell it was affecting everybody, but it seemed like it was affecting most of the team having to deal with it. And then Brandon Miller took it upon himself to re-energize the team and try to carry it.
Well, because here's the thing for me. It was this team has been through so much.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. I mean, someday when they make the 30 for 30 about this team, it's unbelievable. I don't even want to know what some of these guys have had to go through. People who weren't involved in the situation at all is who I feel the worst for, honestly. The thing is that they didn't only have to face it once; they had to face it again, because I had thought personally that after the Darius Miles stuff happened over a month ago now. And I had thought that, we'd wrap that up. We were done with that. We could get back to talking about basketball. It was horrible. But, we can move past that. And then when, the testimony comes out, Twitter starts blowing up. It's all over the national media. I mean, unbelievable. Like, I feel like it got more attention once Brandon Miller's name was involved versus when it was first reported.
Yeah.
You had ABC News, the nightly news running segments about it. It was all over ESPN. They led First Take with it the day after it came out.
I believe they led every show with it.
You even have news outlets from other countries. There was one specifically in the UK, The Guardian, who had released an article about it. So that just kind of gives you how big it got once it was somebody as high profile as Brandon Miller.
Yeah, I want to say that in this last press conference that they had, Greg Burns up there and he says, like, I want to say it was him or the SID that said, like, game questions only. And the first question is from a national media member about, like, obviously not about the game, about the whole situation, which is fair because, I mean, that's what everybody's going to ask you about. I think you have to be prepared for that. But
that's what any reporter is going to do. I know he said game questions only, but, like, if you go in and you just follow along and start asking, specifically about the game and not ask what everybody wants to know about, are you even doing your job?
Yeah, you would be a bad journalist. I think, the way that I see it is I think that it was such I can only imagine how long the discussions were about should he play, should he not play internally with Greg Byrne, with the president of the university, with Nate Oates. The whole situation makes the university look terrible.
Yeah.
There's no escaping from that. The way that the PR was handled was terrible. Personally, I don't know that it's the right decision to let him play against South Carolina. I think maybe you sit him for a game or two. You got to let things simmer down. You got to let the facts come out because, like you said, the South Carolina fan base is chanting at him, lock him up, which I can't even begin to know what that would do to your mental state. Not only for him, but for everyone on the team. You're going to get booed when you go into an opponent's building. But, people aren't going to be chanting horrible things at you. The entire internet's going to not be be saying horrible things about you.
I mean,
and this is presuming innocence, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a media, well, put it lightly, I guess it's a media firestorm right now because, I mean, I don't know if you guys saw this, but, like, Alabama before their last game against Arkansas put out a tweet saying, it's the whiteout game, so wear white, and then all the comments are, like, relating, blood stains to wearing white and how it can show a lot better, and it's just like that stuff is awful to say, and and kind of like you said, Nick, like when you bring that, you kind of bring that upon yourself when you play a guy like Brandon Miller. I mean, when you play him right now, you kind of know that that's what's going to happen, and it's just kind of like we said, I mean, it's a terrible, like, I couldn't imagine, some of these teammates who, I mean, they're having a historic basketball season. I mean, they're number 2 in the country. They're looking like they're going to be number 1 seed for the first time in school history. They could go to a Final Four for the first time in school history, and it's all being overshadowed by this. Obviously, it's all being overshadowed by this very horrible incident that should be talked about. But I just couldn't imagine. I mean, I almost tend to agree with you, Nick, and kind of what you were saying, like, just let the situation almost simmer for a little bit and take it down a notch. But that might also be raising it just as many questions if you do bench him. I don't know.
No, I agree.
The thing that would get brought up if you did decide to bench him and then you brought it back, like, it would be, I'd still feel like we'd still go through the same stuff, because it would be, oh, you thought he shouldn't play, but now you're bringing him back. And then I know you were talking about the mental state of stuff that's getting, chanted during the game, and, like, that is, accurate. Like, that can affect you a lot, but I think it could also affect, if he's not getting charged with anything and then you still bench him or suspend him, and then he's basically just off in a room by himself, not around, the people that he actually cares for and able to do something to. I mean, he's not really getting away from it because of all the chanting, but I think I don't think there's any real right answer to it. So
I think I feel for Greg Byrne, the president, the people who had to make this decision. I feel for Nate Oates. I mean, I can't even imagine what is going through his head right now with everything that he's had to deal with recently with this team. I mean, you've got these terrible tragedies, some mistakes that were made by members of your basketball team, and this is all in the midst of the greatest season in the history of Alabama's program.
Yeah, I mean, it's the greatest season in Alabama's program.
We should be talking about how great this team is. We should be talking about, oh my gosh, they have a real chance to win a national championship. But instead, we're talking about a senseless murder.
Yeah,
and that's the sad part.
And I think it kind of shows just how maybe I don't know if I really want to say bias or what, but it kind of shows the maybe an interesting part of the media, because like we talked about, when it happened to Darius Miles, it was pretty local story. I mean, yeah, maybe a couple ESPN might have reported on it, a couple sports stations might have done it, but when it was Darius Miles, it went away rather quickly from the national scene. This is something that's going to linger, and something that's just going to damage the brand of Alabama and Alabama basketball for probably the rest of the season, if not maybe even next season. And it's something that's going to follow Brandon Miller around for his career because of how it got blown up once his name got attached to it. So, presuming that he is kind of innocent in all this, to an extent, I feel bad for him, because it is just, it's going to be the kind of the talk. I mean, he's a projected top 5 NBA pick, and it's going to follow him wherever he goes. So, yeah,
it's just a tough situation for everyone involved. And like you said, presuming innocence, I do feel bad for Brandon Miller, because he's getting his name dragged through the mud. And, it's not, it's his name that's the headline everywhere. I walked into the student center the other day, and it's Max Kellerman is on, and the headline is Brandon Miller plays despite connection to shooting. And it's man, it's crazy. And when the season first started and they had that scrimmage, I was fortunate enough to be able to ask questions in the post-game press conference to Brandon Miller, and just to compare then to where we're at now is wild.
Yeah, and I will say this, just to kind of put it out there, I think Brandon Miller has actually handled the situation rather well. He hasn't really said anything. It could be very easy for him to, I think, go on the internet and try to, maybe in his mind clear his name and put something out there that's pretty dumb or idiotic or stupid and gets him into more trouble. But he was kind of just let everything settle down. He's played basketball. Obviously, he's had to answer some questions about it. But I think it's just it's a tough situation for a guy like him. Like we all said, assuming he's innocent in it. A guy who's pretty quiet, pretty just kind of sticking to basketball. For him to get dragged around into this, and for him to almost go, he has to now go into basketball games kind of worrying, especially road games, and I'm sure when he gets to the tournament or SEC tournament, he's going to have to go into a basketball game worrying about what the fans are going to say to him. And, as a high-level athlete, maybe you're used to that a little bit, but, you said, nothing's compared to somebody chanting at you, to lock you up in prison, so...
Yeah, I can only imagine, and I don't know that we've ever seen an athlete respond the way that he did against South Carolina. I saw that they were talking about one of the things that Stephen A. Smith brought up was that in the future, presuming that he's innocent, this all goes away. That in the future, that when it comes draft time. The scouts are going to be saying, this guy has unbelievable ability to block out noise.
Yeah, I mean, I think Nate Oates said after the game, Brandon Miller's like the mentally toughest player he's ever seen.
I mean, to score 41 and the game winner, to put the team on your back after, like, just everything that's going on. I mean, your name's getting dragged in the national media, and just from a basketball perspective, it's one of the craziest performances I've ever witnessed.
Yeah.
So, do we have any more thoughts about this, or are we ready to kind of get off the topic?
Oh boy, I am ready to move on and talk about college football.
Yeah, I think we're going to take a quick break and then come back and talk about some, not as serious news, but it'll be fun.
Yeah, we'll be right back.
WVUA-FM, Tuscaloosa.
90.7 Capstone to the college football wrap-up show, off-season edition. I can't remember.
There's never an off-season.
Post or off-season. Yeah, very true. We got stuff happening all the time.
Let's just call it draft season, recruiting season. Well, not recruiting, we're past signing day, but, spring practice season. I don't know.
Fair. We're looking forward to the 8-day game.
8-day season.
We're going to move away from all the bad news that we don't want to talk about, that everyone hates talking about. We're going to talk about just a bunch of different stuff. So I'll kind of lead off with Adam. Me and Joe had the chance, last week?
Yep.
To talk about the new coordinator hires. We were even a week late on that because we didn't have a show, but yep. I want to hear your thoughts.
We had talked about it on a couple of shows before the actual hiring started, and none of these names came up. Nobody was talking about them. But it was typical Nick Saban move to where it's just he's going to hire who he thinks is good for the job. Now, I've heard some rumors about how one of the coordinators specifically, it isn't his long-term plan to have him as a defensive coordinator. If you look at his history, he's coached. Was it 39 years? 39 years coaching, and then the offense coordinator, Tommy Rees, is only 33 years old. So he's been coaching longer than Tommy Rees has been alive. And some people look at the history, how he hasn't really been over, 4 years at a school? He's very quick to go to a new job. And with somebody like that, a lot of people think that hire was made to basically set up a potential move in a couple of years to somebody who might still need to be cleared by the SEC, that being Jeremy Pruitt. We'll see if that happens. Obviously, if you look at the recent Kevin Steele for defense coordinator, you look at his recent jobs, it doesn't really look the best, but he's worked with Nick Saban multiple times. Honestly, I wasn't really happy with the hire myself, but I could see trying to get back to something that is familiar. I can see that maybe, and he's been there for a couple of Alabama defenses, not as the defensive coordinator specifically, because I think he was defensive coordinator in 2007, but then he was there as linebackers coach, where we had some pretty good defenses, we had some pretty good linebackers, so. Hopefully that'll work. And then offense coordinator rise with Tommy Rees. You're not going to see the high-powered offense that we've seen under Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian. But once again, kind of getting back to that familiarity, it's going to look a lot similar, I think, to the early Nick Saban at Alabama, to where it's a lot of running the ball, a lot of tight end usage, because we've had good receivers like Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley who did not have very high-powered offense to put up a whole bunch of stats like we have the last couple of years. And some people have said, you can't use that kind of offense now. You look at Georgia. They just won, back-to-back national champions running that same exact offense that Tommy Rees is kind of running. And his offenses weren't terrible at Notre Dame. They weren't, I think his highest one was a 20 a ranked offense. He doesn't have anything that's top 10 offenses, but also they haven't had the type of athletes that Alabama has. So I think the offensive hire is a little bit better than the defensive hire, but we'll see.
Yeah, so I don't know if you saw this or not, but you talked about how Kevin Steele, the rumor was that he was not viewed as a long-term replacement, that was maybe a placeholder for Jeremy Pruitt.
Yeah.
We actually found, I think it was on Bama Central maybe, that apparently in his time, like he spent time at Alabama, he spent time at Auburn, that he's like 2 years from getting on the state like pension. And that maybe that's one of the reasons why he was hired.
I think I did see that. I didn't remember that when I was actually talking about it, but that would be good. 2 years.
Yeah, you could get the bag.
You get your pension, but also, 39 years is a long time. How much longer does he even want to coach?
Yeah. Especially, it's just when he could just take that pension and that sweet money and go to the lake.
Yeah, it's kind of like the same thing that you said. It's like his recent history is horrible. We were joking about if you're an Alabama fan, do not look at his Wikipedia page.
Yes,
Don't
Wikipedia
do it. That fantastic
his
9-37 record as a head coach.
The head coach, head coaching record is not the best, but if you look at some of the teams he was a part of, specifically at Alabama, so 2007 he gets brought in as the defensive coordinator. We did not have a great 2007. We started off 6-2. We finished 6-6. Won the bowl game to make it 7-6. But then the next year, he's still on the staff, and he was inside linebackers and I believe assistant head coach that year or something. Anyway, 2008, we obviously went 12-0, lost to Florida in the SEC championship game, and did not get to play for a national championship. He leaves. He then comes back. 2013, director of player personnel. That year, we went undefeated until losing to Auburn on the kick six that everybody knows because they still play it. 10 years later. And then 2014, linebackers coach 2014, we had a pretty good team, made the first ever playoff. And then after that, you don't really want to look at it. But he's back, and hopefully we'll have a couple of good years. He can get his money, and then we can hire someone better.
Yeah. Can we just permanently erase the kick six from existence?
Every
time I think about it, I'm just
okay.
Auburn's gonna win the football game.
I want to ask a question.
Yeah.
Where were you when you saw the kick six the first time?
I
know you're from Texas.
I'm from Texas. Yes.
Were you even an Alabama fan at the time? No. Okay. What about you?
I was heavily invested. This was probably, so I started watching Alabama in the third grade, which was, 2011. I'm trying to think. The first game I vividly remember fully watching was that game of the century LSU game. So I was watching the kick six. I'll never forget where I was. I was in my family room. My mom was upstairs watching the game in our upstairs room, and she was the most exaggerated fan ever. She really didn't care about Alabama at the time. And she was just actually thrilled that it happened because she thought it was the greatest play she'd ever seen, which objectively probably is true, but look,
it is a great play for anybody that's not an Alabama fan.
Yeah, for a neutral, if I wasn't an Alabama fan, I would watch that play for the just genuine crowd reaction. Yeah. But just awful that the guy couldn't kick it 5 yards deeper, or he's been 2 yards.
Yeah. So for me. For any new listeners that aren't aware, I am a little bit older. I was in the military, and I don't remember a time I wasn't an Alabama fan because I just remember being an Alabama fan since birth. The first game that I remember going to, there could be some that I don't remember, was 2003, Mike Shula's first game as the head coach against South Florida in Birmingham, Legion Field, the last home game at Legion Field for Alabama. So when that's 10 years before the kick six happens. So the previous 2 years before the kick six, we had lost 2 games and won 2 national championships. This year we're undefeated. It's 28-28. We have 1 second on the clock. It's a 56-yard field goal, or 57. It's 56 or 57-yard field goal. I'm this is because the games that Alabama had won against Auburn at this point were just blowouts. And the games that are close, Alabama was losing. So, except for 2009, that one was kind of close. But so this one, I'm like, this is, my dad, my mom, everybody always talks about the kick, which was 1985, which was like a 52-year field goal. And I'm like, this is my kick situation. This is, my moment. And then I saw that happen. I was in my first year in the military in Fort Lee, Virginia, with a bunch of people that hated Alabama, and I'm watching it on a laptop. It wasn't mine, so I'm glad I didn't throw it across the room. But, it was not a very fun time for me.
Yeah. All I can picture is like the Dallas Cowboys fan who's like punching his TV. Like that was you with that laptop in that moment.
It was me, somebody else's laptop out the window. We're like on the 7th floor now, but he got his laptop back. I was only upset for the next 10 years.
Isn't that what Cam Newton allegedly did? He threw the laptop out the window. Yeah. So you have your own moment. So another thing that we definitely have to talk about, this is a college football podcast, but I feel like, or not a podcast, a radio show. Technically a podcast.
We can start a podcast.
Yeah.
I don't think they have another spot like here, but we can go record somewhere else.
But, we followed the college quarterbacks all year that are going to be in the draft this upcoming year, and we have to talk about Anthony Richardson's, sudden rise to being the number one pick. I mean, he goes from, let's see, he was originally, the day after the Super Bowl, he was at 100-1 to be the first pick. The same day, this is all Fox bets, in-house, they cut his odds in half to plus 5,000. And then everything just goes crazy. Now he's at plus 600? Huh?
Yeah. Sorry.
Well, okay, so first thing, I did see somebody, I don't know how accurate this was, but it did get me thinking because he was talking about, he was mostly talking about Will Levis and how he's, still said to be one of the first quarterbacks taken. And he was basically talking about, he's like, I studied this for a while, and it's basically, I don't know who Anthony Richardson's agent is, but he was basically saying all these quarterbacks that get pushed either are the same, their agent is all the same person, or it was there was another who's the guy that all the quarterbacks go to. It's Carson Palmer's brother. Jordan Palmer, and it was they all go to him for training, and then basically whoever goes to him for training, all of a sudden Mel Kiper puts him at the top of the list, and it was all weird. I don't know how true any of that is, but it just gets you thinking because Anthony Richardson, nobody's talking about him, especially after the year that Florida had. I mean, he played, good. I mean, he wasn't, a great player. If they had had one of those seasons where they're 10-2, I could see this. If he played just out of his mind. But nobody's talking about him all year long, except for maybe that one pass he had against Utah, week 1. But nobody's talking about him, and now all of a sudden he's going to be the number 1 pick. And I can't remember. It might have actually been one of y'all that posted it, but I saw somebody say basically it's because of how well Jalen Hurts played in the Super Bowl.
Interesting.
That they didn't want to miss out on another player like that.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a lot of the Zach Wilson to the Jets kind of situation where, and to be honest, I guess this could still happen because pro days and the combine haven't happened yet, but with Zach Wilson, people thought he was going to be, a top quarterback taken, but he threw a 70-yard pass in pro days.
Well, it was a 70-yard fading away pass.
He was rolling. He threw he was rolling to his left and just chucked it 70 yards. And people thought that was just going to be a regular occurrence in the NFL.
How wrong they were.
And now the guy can't decide when to throw the ball. And the Jets kind of stink, but or they did stink with him as the quarterback. But in Anthony Richardson, I kind of see the same thing where all of a sudden people are just oh yeah, all that stuff he's going to do. He played really good week 1 against Utah. And they're going to be yeah, that's what's going to happen in the NFL. And to me, in my opinion, I'm just no, you're not going to get the openness that you're going to get in college. That's kind of, what we hear a lot with some of these Alabama quarterbacks. Mac Jones had that kind of going against him was, people were well, if you're not throwing to Devontae Smith, what are you going to do? But like Anthony Richardson I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he has a really good combine because he is a really good athlete. But yeah, and like, to be honest, I wouldn't even be shocked if the Jets took him again. It seems like a move they would make. But I think if you're taking him first overall in the draft, I think you're going to miss out on the likes of a Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud, who I think one of those guys will be good.
And see, I believe the mock draft has the Colts trading up to take the Bears' number one pick, then take him when everybody has basically been saying that they're going for Bryce Young or Will Levis, and then, or not Will Levis, C.J. Stroud.
Yeah.
And basically everybody was kind of saying how C.J. Stroud or Bryce was going to go number one, and then the next one, and then Levis. And now Richardson's up there.
Yeah, so I'll kind of go through this, and then I'll give my take. This is from Chris Trapasco from CBS Sports. So he's got a bunch of like quarterbacks moving all over the place for this mock draft. I won't go into that, but he has Lamar getting traded to the Commanders.
Whoa.
If that happened,
all right,
I don't know.
This guy's opinion has been invalidated.
It's tough, but so
I need this guy's job.
He says round one, pick one, a mock trade from the Bears that the Colts would draft Anthony Richardson, even though he's ranked as the 19th best prospect and the 4th best in his position in this draft.
Yeah.
He says that I think Richardson is going to emphatically remove the lid from Lucas Oil Stadium at the NFL Combine. That will lead to the Colts taking a chance on him, given the hiring of former Eagles offensive coordinator as their head coach. Richardson has similarities to Jalen Hurts and all-pro upside, which I don't know that I disagree with, right? Like, I can definitely see
the potential.
The mold.
My issue with this, and maybe if everything goes exactly how this guy's saying, where he does have a really good pro day, really good combine, why trade up to number one for it though? Because
you're scared that other teams taking him.
I have not really liked how the Colts have done their whole quarterback situation since Andrew Luck retired, especially lately. They had Carson Wentz and then Matt Ryan. So I feel like you could get Anthony Richardson at the spot you're already at. You don't have to trade anything to go up to the number one spot to take him unless you're worried the Texans are going to get him. But then if the Texans did take him at number 2, you can only have Bryce Young. You can only have C.J. Stroud.
Bummer.
Yeah, so, okay, here's the way that I look at this. I don't understand why you take Richardson at number 1. I think it's like this sudden like hype. Like everybody's all like super hype about him. I think the combine's going to happen and everybody's going to be like, oh my gosh, Anthony Richardson's the greatest thing ever. To me, there's 2 choices, right, for the first quarterback off the board. You either take Bryce Young or you take C.J. Stroud. I think Bryce Young should be the first quarterback off the board. I think he has like generational talent. Here's the thing. The concern with him is that he's too small, doesn't weigh enough, not tall enough, whatever, right? And I'm not saying that those concerns aren't valid. But if you have those concerns, then take C.J. Stroud, who's the safer choice and, like, pretty much matches all the... Like, I mean, he's the prototypical NFL quarterback. Like, he's got all the tools. I mean, he's the safer choice. I think Richardson is, like, a gamble.
Yeah.
I think, especially to take it number 1.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, and we brought it up, like the comparison to Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts was like a second-round pick. Now, I know he was, I'm pretty sure, towards the top of the second round, if I'm not mistaken. Like, he was picked like 34 from the Eagles. But, I mean, Anthony Richardson, like, I don't see how you could really argue that he's better than Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud.
He's the 21st pick in the second round.
Oh, really? Okay, so he was really late. Never mind. Sorry, I thought he was really soon. Never mind. Either way, it kind of helps my point even more. I mean, like that type of guy. And to be honest, I don't think Anthony Richardson is going to become Jalen Hurts, because at least Jalen Hurts, you could really see him actually was able to throw the ball rather consistently, even if it was at Oklahoma. But I just don't see how, a team, even if they desperately need a quarterback, like, one of the Colts or maybe Colts or Texans or Jets or someone, really needs one. like, I don't see how you could be like, yeah, like, we need Richardson, especially trading up for him.
I would only take him if the other quarterbacks were taken. And there have been quarterbacks that, before a season, it's been looked at like, oh, they're going to be at least a third-round pick, maybe even later, and then they play their way into a number one. For instance, 2019, so after the 2018 season, Joe Burrow is looked at as a late-round quarterback. He did not play well that year. That was his first year starting. He threw almost as many interceptions as touchdowns. Then he has 2019, where in 2019 he has one of the greatest seasons by a quarterback in college football history, wins the Heisman. Then all of a sudden it is, he's getting taken number one. Anthony Richardson did not play himself into a number one, and they're saying he's going to play himself into number one just from a pro day and a combine in shorts and not how you played on the football field. Yeah. Like, even with Will Levis, he played himself out of the number one quarterback taken this year. Like, if he had a really good year at Kentucky, I could see that. C.J. Stroud's been consistent. Bryce Young, hurt, has been more consistent than some of these quarterbacks. I think that has, don't trade up number one to take Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Hypothetical.
Okay.
Will Levis or Anthony Richardson? Because I will go on the record for saying that I do not like picking either of these quarterbacks.
Oh, no, I don't either.
Like, these are my 3 and 4, right?
I mean, I guess if I really, if I was a GM and had to get fired, and I was going to get fired if I didn't take a quarterback.
Okay.
And it was either Will Levis or Anthony Richardson.
All right.
To be honest, I would rather take Richardson because of the stuff that he can do with his legs. I think he is an athlete, and I think if you get so for example, if if you're in a position where you can take him and then maybe sign an older veteran guy to at least start the season and maybe help Richardson in a sense, that is, I think, what I would ideally do. But yeah, gun to my head, had to pick a quarterback, Anthony Richardson, I guess. But yeah, I don't know.
So you were saying if we're general manager, right?
Yeah.
And we're making this pick, I think it really just depends on who are we the general manager of.
That's true too.
Who is our team? So, Joe, you are a Baltimore Ravens fan.
Yes.
If you're the general manager of the Baltimore Ravens, your team has already been built around Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
Anthony Richardson makes sense.
Yeah.
My team at the Steelers, Will Levis makes sense. I don't know about the Cowboys. Do you see Anthony Richardson as a better Dak Prescott?
Does Richardson have the star in him?
Can I be completely honest?
Yes.
I'm a Dak hater, so yeah. I think anybody's a better Dak Prescott. Honestly. Yeah.
Well, would that? So you would obviously think it would be an upgrade, but if we're going off of play style, I think Anthony Richardson and Dak Prescott kind of Dak's bigger, right? I mean, Anthony Richardson's pretty big.
Yeah.
I think
6'4", 232.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe he's not bigger, but
yeah, I was going to say Will Levis is actually an inch smaller.
Well, I'm just saying, comparing if with the quarterback you would already have at the Cowboys, you have Dak Prescott. Do you have his height and weight?
Let me look.
I mean, I'll just say.
Also, okay. One thing I will say is that you said anyone. Hot take, just off the record. I will take Derek Carr right now over Dak Prescott.
A rumor has it. Well, I mean, you can find a rumor to go to any team, but what I have heard more recently is Derek Carr to the Titans.
That could be interesting.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I'm looking at this right now.
Dak is 6'2", 230.
Okay, so Anthony Richardson is bigger than Dak Prescott. So now it would be, you would basically be replacing Dak Prescott with a bigger quarterback who hasn't been proven in the NFL. I don't know. This is why we're not general managers, and we're just on a radio show.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I'm looking at this Will Levis, and I know stats aren't everything, but I mean, this man had a 48% completion percentage against Vanderbilt. They lost that game.
Have you heard the excuses?
What's that?
The excuses are, his whole team got hurt and he didn't have any help.
And to be honest, that might be a fair comparison, but I mean, Like, I mean, know. I don't think
that's the reason.
Hey, but C.J. Stroud couldn't throw in the 40-mile-an-hour winds against Northwestern.
Yeah, you know who could?
Who?
Well, not at Northwestern, but I remember it was Washington quarterback Penix.
Yeah.
And he was in that one, and he threw maybe some of these teams should just wait till next year to take a quarterback.
That's what I'm saying. The board for next year is insane.
It's infinite. Yeah, like
it's unbelievable.
I would much rather have next year's board than
that's
this
why,
year. But I will say that I think if you have to take a quarterback that you would want to start week 1, then to be honest, maybe you would take Levis because he is that more prototypical passer, and you maybe don't have the gamble of Richardson's taken quite a decent amount of risks in a couple of these games. I mean, his end of the season was pretty bad. I mean, I'm looking at his last 4 games. Not his last 4. Excuse me. His last 3 games, he didn't have a completion percentage over 59. So he had a 33% completion percentage against Florida State. I don't think you would get that from Will Levis per se, besides that one Vanderbilt game. So NFL wise, maybe you would rather go Levis, but Anthony Richardson, I feel just has a little. You might be able to get a little more out of him than a Will Levis. So
for the last thing I want to say tonight, kind of ask tonight, is a little bit of speculation, because we were talking about next year's draft class is stacked at the quarterback position, unless somebody gets hurt or doesn't play well. So there is a quarterback who 2 years ago was not looked at as a very good quarterback in the SEC. Then he transfers out to the Pac-12, and then all of a sudden he's getting talked about for the Heisman. We talked about him on this show multiple times.
I think that was mostly us.
Early in the season,
people were out on him.
Well, early in the season, after the first game, a lot of us here.
Both of you were out on him. Yeah, I never gave up on Bo Nix.
A couple of weeks later, we saw what he did when he wasn't playing the best defense in college football. And then I said, if he keeps playing like this, he could, get the Heisman. And a bunch of people, we kind of laughed. It was kind of joking. But then a couple weeks later, he had the 4th best odds to win the Heisman. So it wasn't just us thinking it. But if he has a similar season, does he play himself into a first-round quarter? Well, maybe he doesn't even have to. Maybe somebody will just put down a mock draft with him number 1. But do we think that's a possibility? I'm
going to start making mock drafts right now.
I mean,
they all have Bo Nix.
It's got to be the easiest job, because even if you do bad, Mel Kiper has made some outrageous mock drafts.
Well, he had the one draft board where. And to be fair, I guess not a lot of the quarterbacks did well, but I think he had Jimmy Clausen as the best rated quarterback in one of the. I forgot what year it was, but I think it was his big board was the wildest thing ever. And obviously, it's hindsight. And to be honest, some of these guys might, C.J. Stroud might be awful.
That is true.
Some of these guys might be bad. In one of the years, 2010 draft, his top 5 quarterbacks were Clausen, Sam Bradford, Colt McCoy, Dan LeFevre, and then Tim Tebow. So proves how inaccurate you can be.
Well, at least one of those guys is still in the NFL.
Who's that?
Colt McCoy.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's true. But
I mean,
I think
this is why okay, if you're the Bears, in this mock draft, it has them trading down to 4, and they get Will Anderson. That's awesome, because you get Will Anderson, if Justin Fields ends up stinking, you have a gold quarterback class.
They could stay at number 1, and they could take Will Anderson, or they could trade back and get him, because I don't think Texans, they're looking for a quarterback. Colts, obviously, they're looking for a quarterback. If you can get one of those teams to give you all the money in the world to trade up, but basically you have to convince them that you're going to take a quarterback at that point, especially if you're trying to get the Texans to trade up. Apparently the Colts are going to move up for Anthony Richardson. We'll see. But the Cardinals, they just had J.J. Watt retire. So I think everybody kind of thinks, I think it even has it on there where Jalen Carter from Georgia's going to go there. Because I don't think you have to worry about the Cardinals taking Will Anderson. So I think you can trade down to 4 and still get him. But you could just stay at 1. If nobody gives you a good enough offer, you could just stay at 1, take Will Anderson. You got the player you wanted anyway. So
yeah. No, I will say that, like, if the Colts were to approach the Bears, like, the Bears could probably get a decent amount of draft capital for that number 1 pick. I mean, if they trade back to, like, 4, still get Will Anderson, and they get, like, a second, a third, maybe a future couple picks, I mean, that might actually make a lot more sense to them. But I don't know. It's kind of weird, too, because didn't the Colts GM or owner, is it Jim Irsay, I believe?
I believe so, yeah.
He said that he really liked Bryce Young. So
I mean, look.
Another thing. I don't know if it makes sense with Anthony Richardson, but, a bunch of these reports come out just to try to get somebody else to trade up.
That is true. That's true. Agents do move.
Yeah.
Move this way.
I'll say that, like, look, if I'm an NFL GM, like, why are you even, like, I wouldn't even draft a quarterback this year. I'm going to be completely honest. I take, like, one of these generational pass rushers, and then, like, I get a stopgap. Like, go get Stetson Bennett in, like, the last round.
So much safer off taking, like, a Jalen Carter, Will Anderson than you would be even taking a Bryce Young.
And then take your quarterback of, like, the 10 next year.
If I'm the Bears and I have this number 1 pick, obviously I'm going to listen to who wants to trade up, because if I can still go back to 4 and still get who I want anyway. But do y'all know about the Ricky Williams trade when he was coming out of college?
Oh, my gosh. Yes.
So the Saints traded their 1st, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th round in the 99 draft, 1st and 3rd round picks from the 2000 draft to the Redskins, and then they got the 5th overall pick for the 99 draft, and that's when they took Ricky Williams.
Talk about a bombshell.
So I am waiting for that offer if I'm the Bears. If I don't get that, I'm just taking Will Anderson.
Yeah, easy.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends, because, like we said, like, if you know the team, or if you can assume, like, if the Colts offer to trade, a couple picks for that 1st round pick, you kind of know they're probably going to take a quarterback. And like we said, Houston's going to take a quarterback. Arizona probably won't take a quarterback, but they might not. You're not going to pick both Jalen Carter and Will Anderson, obviously. So I think if you're the Bears and you really are set on taking a defensive player, then you might as well trade back, get to that 4 spot, get like 2-3 other picks later in the draft, and just draft Will Anderson. Like you said, Nick, to be honest, you could, if you really wanted to take a quarterback for Chicago, not that they really need to take one, but I mean, you could get, I don't know, Stetson Bennett, or I think the guy from Stanford, Davis Mills, is coming out. Like, there's a plethora of 6th round quarterbacks in this draft, so you can take one, or take receivers to actually help your quarterback.
Yeah, but
what a thought.
I mean, maybe if they use those draft picks to take receivers, but if the Colts, I don't know, Bears, they need good offensive playmakers to go help Justin Fields up there. If you could somehow convince the Colts to give up the weapons for the quarterback they're trying to take, maybe. I don't know. But I'm making them, back up the truck. if I'm going to give away the 1st.
To be fair, if the Colts are willing to take Anthony Richardson number 1, who knows what they'll be willing to give you to do it. I mean, if they're that crazy, you might as well ask them for the draft, like you said, that Ricky Williams deal.
Yeah. So anything else we want to hit on? We got a bunch of stuff going on. Alabama women's basketball lost today. Heartbreaker on senior day.
Yeah, that was brutal.
Man, that press conference was tough after.
Yeah.
Basketball we've already talked about. Men's basketball we won't get into any more of that. Gymnastics did lose, but for people that don't understand gymnastics, it's all based on your scores. So, like, as long as you have a good score, with gymnastics, it's not people voting. Like, I think this is number 1. It's who has the best average score on the season, your national qualifying score. So, Alabama was ranked number 9. They played number 8.
Wait, that's how it works?
Yeah, it's literally what your score is.
So you go into the meet with a set score?
So you have your national qualifying. So that's going to determine your placement for regionals and stuff like that.
Okay.
So Alabama's score, their national qualifying score, has them ranked at number 9 in the nation. LSU was number 8. They played each other. Alabama lost by .05 of a point. And so, like, with that score, that's also Alabama's second highest score of the season. So they're not going to drop at all.
Okay. All right.
I mean, they might drop one spot if whoever was number 10 moved up. But they're doing really well. And they did have the first back-to-back perfect 10s in program history.
Wow. That's crazy, yeah. Baseball 6-0, I believe. Still
They're
6-0 or 7-0.
They're 6-0. There's only 2 SEC teams that are still undefeated, and none of them were the 7 that was ranked in the top 10 at the beginning of the season.
Wow.
It's Alabama, who was ranked 20th, and then South Carolina. I'll have to double-check.
What's Alabama up to now?
Well,
I think
they're still at 20.
I guess I don't move very
The new rankings are going to come out soon, so we'll see if they move up.
Baseball's kind of weird with the rankings because it's pretty much all based off of D1baseball.com.
No, and then
like there's no real AP poll.
Well, like but like that's their rank. There's like 3 or 4.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things.
But then softball as well. Softball did lose today, but it was their only loss of the weekend. They won 4 games, lost 1. They are now 11-3, I believe. 3 losses. Lehigh opening game today to Kennesaw State, and in between that, to the number 1 team in the nation, UCLA, by 2 runs. And I still see people saying how bad this team is and how much of a disappointment it is, and I'm like, it's a long season and they've only lost 3 games. They're gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Also, just a shout out. We had some people at the track SEC indoor championships this past weekend get some medals. Yes. Too many to name all of them. We were with limited time, and then I believe tennis. I believe they won this weekend, women's and men's tennis.
Yeah.
It was pretty good weekend.
Yeah,
despite the couple losses. So.
Oh, and soccer has started their spring schedule, which isn't going to count when the new season. This is just like their practice games, kind of how baseball and softball have like fall league and stuff.
Oh my goodness! Random note here: there is a guy who's projected to be maybe not pretty high in the draft, but named Chris Paul, NFL draft prospect out of Tulsa. Chris Paul coming to the league, trying to get a ring.
Yeah, he needs a ring desperately.
Yeah,
very badly.
But anyway, sorry. I thought that was just really cool.
I don't know.
Oh, also,
XFL.
We should give a shit. Yeah, I was just about to say
XFL is so sick.
AJ McCarron with another fourth quarter masterclass.
2-0, 2 game-winning drives in the fourth quarter.
I must say, it's looking like I believe St. Louis plays DC next weekend.
Yeah. Most of the XFL has looked good. The Orlando Guardians appear to be the worst team in the league.
Them and Vegas seem to be really bad.
The Guardians haven't been close in either one of their 2 games.
That's true.
And then Vegas, they are like Orlando looks bad playing. They have put out a bad product on the field so far in their 2 games. They have not. I mean, they were competitive for probably a half today. But then Vegas, they're playing in a soccer field that looks like a high school baseball field. I mean, it was originally built as a baseball field, but, like, not a lot of fans. Grass was dead. They spray painted it green. I am going to be talking about it in our next episode of 3-Point Conversion that we will be recording in a couple of days. So if y'all want to listen to more of the XFL and the first week of USFL stuff's coming up. So
yeah, Birmingham.
I saw that
the Stallions looking to go back to back, baby.
The USFL season ticket prices are like insanely low. Like you can get season tickets for like $20.
$25.
It's unbelievable.
I mean, especially in Birmingham because they play at UAB's stadium.
Yeah.
So
Protective Stadium.
They don't really have. It's not like you can really get there's not a bad seat in that place. So it's great.
Yeah, but I think that's going to do it for us. We'll be back same time next week. Hopefully we'll have some interesting, more college football stuff to talk about. More college
football, interesting, and just overall good news.
Yeah, hopefully we don't have to lead off another show like we did this week.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Hopefully it's not it's not as sad as it was this week. So.
Yeah. So we'll be back same time next week. Thank you for joining us here on 90.7 The Capstone.
WVUA FM, Tuscaloosa.